Our guest tonight is Greg Hammel. He's a parent from Goleta, and we're going to talk about CRT, just communities, and somehow the beginning of CRT and how it actually started here in our county. Welcome, Greg. Thank you for being here.
All right, Thomas, thanks for having me. And yes, we're going to talk tonight about just communities. Giving a little background, CRT has been in the news a lot lately. There's plenty of communities around the country who are, parents are speaking out against it. I just want us to know that we have CRT in Santa Barbara Union School District under the name of Just Communities. And it is a nonprofit organization that follows the constructs of CRT. And I want to go to a slide here, give you some background. I'm going to quote the executive director. So we began our partnership with the Santa Barbara Union School District in 2005. And the goal of the Just Communities was to close the education gap between children of color and white and Asians, because there is a persistent education gap when you do test results.
Right, and that was the original premise of why Just Communities told the school district that they should hire Just Communities, because they're going to try and close the education gap.
Right,
and that was years ago.
Well, it started in 2005, and according to their director, and their premise is that children of color have trouble learning, and because there's an education gap because of systemic racism that they're exposed to. So that was the premise, and their goal was to educate through a curriculum the children so that they eliminate systemic racism or minimize it to get the scores up. So that was the thought back in 2014 when they started a pilot program. Just Communities started a pilot program in 2014. It was implemented, and the goal again was to eliminate the education gap between people of color and white Asian students. And if you go to the next slide, so part of this, now this curriculum has been a bit controversial because it has been, I don't say hidden, but kind of hidden from parents. We tried to look at it, 4 or 5 years ago, and it was difficult to get the actual copy. You had to go to the administration building. You got to look at it for an hour, sort of thing.
That is a copy of their curriculum, the Just Communities curriculum, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we saw all of it.
And you weren't allowed to take it out. You
right.
Could go in and look at it like it's a secret document.
Yeah. And now it's evolved to where teachers now look at it through websites. It's evolved to the point where it's on password-protected websites, which only teachers can see and parents can't. So the curriculum defeats the spirit of the California Education Code, which states that all curriculum should be transparent and available to parents to review at any time. So they kind of are not in the spirit of that, and maybe for a reason that we see here on this table 1. So this is a table out of the Just Communities curriculum where it identifies forms of oppression, and you can, it's self-explanatory. There are groups of people who oppress, and they're the privileged group, and there are target groups who are oppressed. So this type of thinking is prevalent throughout the Just Communities curriculum. Now, as parents, we're a little older, we were educated and raised during Martin Luther King. And we believe that all men, women, children should be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin or the their chromosomes and their genes, sex, chromosomes, or how old they are. But according to just communities, well, we need to judge people, and the last one, religion. Christian people oppress, they're the target group, and they oppress all other religions. So we, as parents, many throughout the county, disagree with this approach, and we stick with the Martin Luther King model. So,
well, certainly from this chart, it looks like they have, that is, just communities has an axe to grind. With Christian people, we see here that they are the privileged group and that they oppress all others. Rich people, wealthy people are oppressing the working class and poor. This looks like a way to get people stirred up and angry at different classes in society.
That is one of the side effects, but they thought, and their premise was, if you could teach this form of oppression, then that would help the persons of color to educate better.
They get a better score.
So let's just leave it at that, and let's see what the results were.
Right. Oh, good.
So if we go to our next slide.
Next slide, which is...
They took this premise, and they had a pilot program. It started in 2014, and it was approved. And then from year 2015 to 2019, we have data on what their results were. We don't have any from 2020 and 21 because of COVID. But if you look at the graph, what it shows is, in blue, is the percent of Hispanic students that meet math competency based on the California Assessment of Student Progress, which is the standard test all schools use throughout California. So you can see that in 2015, that Hispanic students performed not as well as the white students who are in orange. 25% of them meet standard, so 75% don't meet standard. And teaching just communities was supposed to close that gap. Now, the gap between the white students and the Hispanic students is that yellow line. So if you subtract the orange bar from the blue bar, you'll get the gap, which is that yellow line. You can see that the gap between the Hispanics and the whites and the Asians has been constant at about 40%.
And so they've had 5 years of just communities in Santa Barbara Unified District schools.
Yes.
And it has not changed the education gap. Is that what I'm getting from your
The data shows zero change in performance of the students. And so that's what the data show. And the data are the best data we can get are from the California assessment, because this set of data is what all schools are judged by in California. So It's a standard. So by standard, they're not meeting their goal. They have not closed the gap one iota. Let's see. So from 2015 to 2021, they've been paid approximately $300,000 to $400,000 a year. Maybe not 400, but the data I could find was that in 2021, this school year, SB Unified had expenditures of $338,622 for just communities. So if you average, $300,000 over the last 7 years, you're talking a couple $1 million that we've invested in this, and we have nothing to show for it.
No results.
No results
in all the schools.
And those bars are the sum of all the schools in SB, elementary, junior high. Now that was for math, and I just wanted to be complete because the California assessment does math and English. So this is the English results, in standard language arts is what they call it. So again, in language arts, we see the same trends where the Hispanics are not performing as well as the whites and the Asians, and the gap, the yellow line, has not improved statistically. So we're getting no improvement in language arts, no improvement in math, and they sold it on this. And we keep spending this, and no one stops to think after 7 years, wait, this expenditure is not this is not working.
Right.
And we've mentioned this to the school board, and they move on and keep approving this curriculum.
Maybe it's that they don't want to admit that this program is not working because it might make them look foolish or wasteful of taxpayer dollars.
Well, that's what leaders do. You look at what works, and if it doesn't work, you cut and run. You don't keep funding things that don't work. And that's why people are in leadership positions, to make those sort of decisions. They're tough. They're not easy. You have to be humble and say, we tried something, it didn't work, and let's move on to something better. And so we do have something better in our school district. We have a wonderful school, Franklin Elementary. The principal there is Casey Kilgore, and she has implemented some common sense things that you would think would help children who are at risk for not learn. So she does things like creates, and I've talked to her about this a little bit, and so she does common sense things like if a kid's not learning, they create pods of 4 to 5 kids with a tutor, and those kids at risk learn in small groups. And then they involve the parents of the kids at risk. So the parents can follow up at home with, make sure they're doing their homework. And then they have after-school tutoring. So they do all this common sense stuff. I mean, things you would think would work, and guess what? They do work. The principal of Franklin has doubled from the time they started. They went from about a 30%, or no, a 25% competence kids all the way up to 58. So she's more than doubled the amount of children who meet state standards
in her school.
In her school, who are Hispanic. So kudos to her.
Kudos, yes.
We should learn from her. Our school board should take the Kilgore plan and spread that among all the elementary schools, and take the funding that we're paying Just Communities, the millions of dollars, and fund this Kilgore plan, because that works. And then you see the chart.
She's got a 100% increase.
Yeah, from 26
skills
to 58% meet its standards.
And Just Community has 0% increase.
Well, Just Communities at the same schools, in the elementary schools at Just Communities has been flat. There's been no improvement, no real decrease, but no improvement. So
very good.
That's where we're at in our school district.
So what else can we say about this program? You've talked about Just Communities, how they are flatlining and taking money and putting out questionable charts that stretch into race training and
race baiting. I mean, some of us, we're all children of Martin Luther King, and what we're being taught now is it's against what we learned Martin Luther King.
Right.
So we as parents have to say, wait a minute, maybe we don't want to go down this path.
And it doesn't work. So
and
for
it doesn't
two
work.
good reasons.
Yeah.
And then you've offered an alternative at Franklin School. Now,
one thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
We're talking about school results, but we also, we start talking race and gender equality and that. Just Communities have been doing this for 7 years in the schools. And what have we seen recently in the news? We have seen our school district have multiple, I've read over 12 racial incidents that shouldn't have happened on our schools. So if Just Communities is so good at teaching racial harmony, they're actually, now we see more racial animosity, if we can believe the news. And Wendy Sims Moten has come out and said, well, this has to stop. Well, Wendy, your Just Communities program's been doing this for 7 years. Why do we have this? Go ask Jared Schwartz. Say, what happened? Why are the kids racially angry at each other now? Why do we have these incidents increasing? It should have decreased. So there's another thing. We have to check ourselves. Mm-hmm. We have to review these programs and not just keep go on for another 7 years.
Exactly. Now, okay, lastly then, in your opinion, Greg, what can we do, what can parents do to help bring about a change, perhaps moving towards a Franklin-type program as opposed to the old program of just communities?
I think immediately, then we just have to vote in new school board members who are data-driven people, who make their decisions based on data and not emotional, race issues and gender issues, which cloud the thinking. They're not critical thinkers. So we need to get school board members who are willing to look at the data, willing to make tough decisions and say, I'm not getting results from this curriculum. I'm paying $300,000 a year. We need to cut bait and do something better. You have to listen in the fall for school board members and superintendents of schools, who's ever elected, hold them feet to the fire and say, what are you going to do to make sure our kids are learning? Because they're obviously not. When you have 30%, when you have 70% of the Hispanics not meeting standard, 7 out of 10 of those kids are going to go into either college or trades or whatever, and they're not meeting minimum standards. And that's sad, and we don't like to talk about that in our school district, but we need to.
Well, very good, Greg. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, and good to have you here. Tonight on The Final Word, we're going to talk about nonprofits. And are they really nonprofits? I mean, when you have that much money, you got to wonder, it's going somewhere. And so, here's my story. What about these millionaires? What about these local Montecito millionaires who make their millions across America using capitalism and oil and infrastructure, highways and buildings and cars and trucks to make their millions? These same millionaires who've made so much from capitalism, from our workers, from our infrastructure, oil production, roads, everything that American taxpayers pays for. Once they arrive here in Montecito, they start donating to nonprofits like Fund for Santa Barbara. And the Fund for Santa Barbara gives to other nonprofits like Just Communities. Now that may all seem well and good, but let's look into the details. In Santa Barbara, there are 2,441 nonprofits right now. That's a lot of nonprofits, just in Santa Barbara. You'd think that would be for the whole nation, but no. Santa Barbara. And those nonprofits bring in $7.1 billion a year, every year. And they have assets of $12 billion. Now, the whole county runs on 1/10 of that. The whole county runs on $1.2 billion. These nonprofits have $12 billion. Now, these titans of industry, these masters of commerce, are now turned into weasels of wokeism, patsies of progressivism, and saps for socialism. Isn't this the new church tithing? You must give to the woke 501c3 nonprofit if you want to be forgiven for being rich. I wish I had that kind of a problem. Now, our local rich are living the high life with no urban strife. Once ensconced in our safe and temperate community, they refuse to support America First values, refuse to support family values, turning their cashmere sweater backs on common sense business values that made them rich. All to be woke and get invited to the right parties and events. Events honoring communists, socialists, and other race-baiting activists as pillars of our community. Our imported rich capitalists support the Fund for Santa Barbara, to the tune of $4 million a year. And they also support thousands of other nonprofits that push progressive causes, anti-energy causes, anti-building causes, anti-America causes, and causes like sending hired kids into college board meetings to disrupt, yell, and menace the community, and hired kids to march through the streets and camp out in front of the police station and yell at the police. Oh yes, we saw all that in the Summer of Love 2020. Now, from their website, the Fund for Santa Barbara, and sorry I'm picking on you, but you're an easy target. The Fund for Santa Barbara is involved with, quote, advancing progressive change by strengthening movements for economic, environmental, political, racial, and social justice, all of which are a concealed way of supporting just communities, race training, anti-Christian bias, anti-energy bias, anti-business bias, and basically a whole lot of communism. So, would the rich really believe all this if they were confronted with the just community's race oppression chart? Right here. And in the final analysis, dear rich people, is this how you made your fortunes? By cowering and kowtowing to the communists? I don't think so. Rich people, be strong, be brave, and be great. Support those beliefs that made you great, and we will still throw nice parties for you. And that's the final word. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 501c3s, and those are nonprofits that there are 2,440 of in Santa Barbara. And each one of these nonprofits is signed up with the IRS, and they can take money in, and the people who donate get a partial write-off. It's not a complete write-off. It's more like in the 20-30% they can write it off. But those 501c3s, like Santa Barbara Fund and like Just Communities, they have to be sure that they don't do certain things. Now, one of them is you can't just benefit yourself. You can't pay yourself a huge wage and just say, I'm taking all this money and giving myself a big fat paycheck. Although you can give yourself a paycheck. You can't do lobbying. You can't take your money that you've gotten from donors and give it to a political campaign or lobby for particular views. You cannot have that money used for political campaign activity. And you have obligations of reporting, and I'm just reading through this here. So basically you can't give the money to a political organization. But this is the problem. Even though you can't donate to a political campaign, you can push for issues that your political favorite candidate is also pushing for. And so, for instance, here we have a headline from The Independent. SCAN receives a highly competitive grant from the Fund for Santa Barbara. SCAN is a group of community activists came together to have a consensus that there were organizations that needed to get together. These are activists working on a wide range of progressive causes. And so what happens is the money comes in to Santa Barbara Foundation, or the Fund for Santa Barbara, and then it goes to SCAN. And then SCAN pushes for progressive causes, which in this case, from SCAN's own website, they are interested in building bridges between environmental and social justice organizations. They also want to oppose dangerous oil extraction projects. And they want to thank the Fund for Santa Barbara for supporting this important work. So even though they're not giving money directly to a candidate, what they're doing is giving money to all the causes that, for instance, Salud Carbajal would be interested in. And so what happens is you get a backdoor funding for everything on the left. And if you think it's not a lot, like I say, just in Santa Barbara alone, $7 billion a year goes into these nonprofits. And it all goes out somewhere. And a lot of it goes out to these causes that are interested in shutting down production, shutting down businesses, keeping the county locked in a mire of non-growth, and above all, getting in candidates who will protect the pension plans and the wages and the school plans of the entrenched bureaucracy. And so what we have is $7 billion going to that cause. And then on the other side of the political spectrum, we have what? Is there one organization? Oh, wait a minute, I thought of one. YAF, Young Americans for Freedom, the Reagan Center. Now, they are a 501c3 also. They can collect money, and they do collect money, to put forward their views of conservatism and to produce that view and to forward that view into schools, into young persons' minds. And so we have one alternative to the Fund for Santa Barbara. And so that is a little lopsided, but it's something. It's a start. Perhaps YAF can expand their donor base. They could certainly use $7 billion. That would do quite a bit of expansion. I have one more thing here to read about the Fund for Santa Barbara. Let's go back for a second. Here we have Jane Fonda expressed appreciation to the fund, whose work, she noted, has never been more necessary than now. She wants to thank Mickey Flacks for her tireless effort, and she wants to thank Dick Flacks for his effort and to establish social housing fund and housing justice efforts in the region. Also longtime Fund for Santa Barbara donor and supporter, Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. And at this meeting, where these people were all speaking, they gathered $60,000 in an hour for the Fund for Santa Barbara. And Senator Jackson lauded the Fund for Santa Barbara for the critically important work it does and noted how in current times getting progressive values out there and assuring that the world will be a better place is a greater challenge than ever before. And just to make a quick mention, Dick Flacks, who they were lauding at this meeting, is the founder of SDS, Students. Now, Dick Flacks is a professor at UCSB. And so what I'm showing here is that the basic bottom line for many of these groups that the Fund for Santa Barbara donates to are strict Marxists. And they're interested in shutting down America as we have known and instituting a new America based on division, on racial hatred, on class warfare. These are all the classic sinews of Marxism. So it's something to look at and something to think about when that side has $7 billion and the conservative side has probably $10 million coming into YAF in this county. So that's a little look at those issues on 501c3s and how they all work.